What is going on, everybody? I'm Rob Westerman of GP Daily. Joining me today, former Green Bay Packer Mike Wahle. Mike, how you doing? How was your Christmas?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on. It was great. We were just talking. Ate a lot of ribs, a lot of tamales, and watched that Packers game. Then watched the game after that, the Colts Cardinals. Played some poker last night. Lost to the family. Pretty standard Christmas for me.
I'll say what's new, right?
Yeah.
Good to hear. I had an awesome Christmas. Both mine and my wife's family, they're here in the area. We hopped around to quite a few houses over the last few days, at least. 6-month-old daughter, it was her first Christmas, so
Oh, nice.
it was a great time. Watched the Packers game, like yourself, with my dad and fam. Cap off a great day. Uh, it was just perfect. Definitely blessed, and they won. So, how much better can it get?
Well, when you have the whole 8 days of games out of 10, like this has been like the best Christmas week ever. I can't tell you. I know that the reasons that they're doing is not great, but gosh, we had Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday again. This has been phenomenal.
2 games on Tuesdays. We never get games on Tuesday, and I was like, all right, work's done on Tuesday, and I'm like, boom, we got football. It was already on at 4:00, and I was like, well, let's do this. So before we dive into the Browns Packers, I want to kind of take it back to your days in high school. You lettered in baseball and football. Uh, did any part of you want to go the baseball route, or was it always football?
You know what? I was actually my best sport was I was a basketball player.
Okay.
That was my best sport. When I was a senior in high school, I was a 6'5", 235 point guard. And that was kind of what I thought I was going to do. I was really good. I mean, for my area and everything, I was a pretty good player. Football, I didn't start playing until my freshman year, and I was a great pitcher in baseball. So people thought, okay, I'm left-handed, I can throw hard, so he's going to be a quarterback. And I was an absolutely awful quarterback, awful. And so I ended up going to play football almost because I had, the Naval Academy. My mom signed me up as far as like the initial paperwork to even have the Navy look at me.
Yep.
And I wasn't getting scholarship offers from anywhere. Like, when you're a freshman in Southern California and you just go, oh, USC is going to pick me up because I'm going to be that good. USC wasn't calling.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to the Naval Academy. Really, they just gave me an opportunity to go play. I was playing tight end my senior year. I had a pretty good year, and they gave me an opportunity to go play tight end there and the whole deal. And they were playing Division I schools, and my parents didn't have to pay for college, which was a huge deal. Right. But I was probably a prospect-wise, people thought I was a really good baseball prospect, but we could talk about this forever. If you have bad coaching, I had a terrible coach in high school and threw my arm out and kind of I quit playing baseball after my junior year. I just couldn't deal with it anymore.
Yeah, I like you. I had a bad baseball coach as well, but I didn't throw my arm out. Unfortunately, I was a pitcher as well, but I played baseball and football in high school. Football was always my favorite sport growing up. Obviously, fast forward here a little bit from high school. You attended, like you said, Naval Academy. 98 was drafted in the second round supplemental draft by the Packers. Could you walk me through how that process played out? Did you have an idea Green Bay was going to take you, or was it a surprise?
Yeah, I think everything was a surprise that day. It was a whirlwind. So you go into the supplemental draft, and what it is it's a blind lottery, which means basically everybody looks at their 1999 draft status because they'd already got through the 1998 draft. So the supplemental draft is between kind of 98 and 99.
Yeah.
And so they look and they'll say, we project that we're going to have the third pick in the third round, and this team's going to have the 27th pick in the second round. So they just put in a blind bid for you. So the Packers must have thought, if they picked me in the second round, they must have thought that I was going to be a third round pick with everybody else. And Ron Wolf was obviously a guy who had some ties to the Naval Academy. And I was just very, very lucky that he did. And he liked to have military kids around because who knows what would happen after that. I think I was probably going to the Giants or something.
Yeah, and well, obviously turned out well. Played for the Packers till 2004, then Panthers, then Seahawks. All Pro Bowl in 2005. Started 138 games throughout your career. Something I wanted to highlight, kind of extra here. You recovered 4 fumbles in your career. Any of those fumbles stand out the most that you can tell us about?
No, I can't remember a single one. The only one I remember is one I didn't get. We're playing the Washington football team now.
Yep.
And I forgot who fumbled the ball, but I ran and dove on this ball, and I was kind of announcing that I got it. I was yelling, and some kid just came in and took it away from me. Of course, yeah. It slipped right out of my hand. I was like, I don't got it. Gosh,
it's all right. Got it? No, that's cool. I remember a few instances this season. Offense covered their own fumble. Yash Nyman being one of them during the Rams game a while back. Thankfully, some doesn't really get talked about, but it either turns in. I think it turned into 3 points that drive. Instead, could have been a massive turnover, which we don't have many of, so they always just get amplified. But turnovers are backbreakers, so obviously being able to save them.
The tackles, like the tackles that save touchdowns and obviously fumble recoveries. Those are kind of I remember one of the biggest plays. I think maybe my second or third year, I was playing tackle. We were playing against Tampa Bay, and Brett rolled out to the right. He threw a pick to Rondé Barber, and Rondé started taking it back. And I somehow got all the way back there, and I got to him about the 30, 35-yard line, and he turned back on me, and I just stuck my left arm out. I clotheslined him and took him down. And they ended up not scoring on that drive. They got 3, and we won by 2 or something like that. And it was just one of those are the plays that you remember a little bit more, probably because I had to use some semblance of athleticism and et cetera, et cetera. But those plays kind of stick out, I think, for a lot of guys, especially as linemen who don't have a lot of stats of plays that are kind of difference makers in the game there for sure.
Yep, save a touchdown, like you said, you won by 2 or 3 points. Without that, could have lost. Anything could have happened. Obviously, you make one play in a game, the rest of the game doesn't go the same way as it did if you didn't make it. I mean, some people are like, well, if it would have held them to a field goal, we would have won by 3. Well, if it would have held them to a field goal, that everything after that is completely different than what actually happened. You know what I mean? Theoretically.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So let's hop over to the Packers-Browns game. Speaking of turnovers, Packers had 4 takeaways. Yesterday's 24-22 win over the Browns at Lambeau Field on Christmas. Initial thoughts on yesterday's performance overall from the Packers?
I think it just really highlights the difference between Aaron Rodgers and every other quarterback in the league. And Baker had some bad throws, and we could talk about it, kind of his 4 picks. But Aaron Rodgers is playing without, what is it now, probably 4 out of his 5 starting offensive linemen. Depending, I think John Rennie Jr. is going to end up being a starter at some position when they come back in, but the rest of those 4 guys, will not.
Right.
And he is just absolutely having his way with defenses. If you watch what he's doing pre-snap and you think about the timing that he's getting rid of the ball, I mean, they're playing against Myles Garrett yesterday, so what do? They slide pro. They single up that Yashki, who's doing well. But they only let him go single when Aaron's going to get rid of the ball within 0.75 seconds. I mean, he's just such a master, the way his ball plays. And we had some drops yesterday. It would have been even kind of more one-sided, but it's amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback play at the level he's playing at right now. I mean, it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, with the guys in front of him, and like you said, if he's not there, something we don't realize is all those checks, the line of scrimmage, all the things he's doing, and within 10, 15 seconds of coming out of the huddle, it's boom, he's scanning, making calls, and boom, quick, it's gone, and then 15 yards to Devonte or Allen Lazard or anybody. Like you said, those. He had a great throw to Devonte Adams late in the game, could have sealed the game, a rare drop. But, yeah, he's playing at an MVP level. Earlier this season when he was going through all that drama, I didn't think he'd ever get back to that point where, the public and everybody would kind of be like, all right, this is the guy. But it seems like there isn't another challenger out there. Tom Brady had a poop game against the Saints last weekend. And it seems like he's that one guy outside of Jonathan Taylor. But, yeah. It's just that, the most valuable player, maybe Jonathan's playing, a better season, but man, how does a quarterback not more valuable than a running back,
Yeah. I mean, that argument always comes up, and all these awards are kind of, I think they're a little bit frivolous. I think for players, I don't know. Everybody would obviously like to win it. And I think a lot of players would like to see a running back get it just to prove that we can still give the ball to a running back and call him an MVP level player. But, certainly with the way that the rules have changed in favor of the offense, in favor of the quarterback specifically, it would be difficult to not give that to a quarterback. And again, I know we're middle of the road maybe as far as total offense, but if you look at what he's playing with, especially up front, I mean, I've talked about it. Adam Stenavich, the line coach for the Packers, has done an amazing job, but they're mediocre at best. If Aaron Rodgers wasn't, let's put it this way. What are we, 11-3?
12-3 now, yeah.
12-3? Okay. What do you think the record is if Aaron Rodgers hasn't played a single snap this year? I mean, if you want to think what does a real MVP look like? I'm sure the Colts might not have their record, but they're probably 3-12, right? I mean, honestly.
5 wins at best.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they get the Lions. You literally have to start counting with fingers and thumbs because there's just not that many ways they're going to win games. And you see it now with the last 2 games, especially on defense.
Yep.
you start seeing like there's some things going on where we're not maybe as dominating as we thought we were early in the season or maybe midway through the season. There's a lot of kind of external question marks that are popping up a lot in these games, and we hit them yesterday because they had 4 turnovers.
Right. Browns game, obviously the Bears game, 30-plus points. The Ravens, 30-plus points. Rams, 28 points. The Vikings, obviously 34 when we lost. It's starting to kind of snowball here, and kind of got to get a hold of it. Those who watch me on a regular basis, my dad raised me as a Packers fan from La Crosse, Wisconsin. I've just been ingrained from the beginning with that. I'm always a mix of optimistic and somewhat realistic. Optimism always takes over natural for me. I was just super pumped about being 12-3, getting a win, capping off Christmas. I'll never complain about a win, but yesterday I saw Adrian Amos tweet this after the game. He said, fans of good teams are so spoiled, too close for comfort, do better, kind of thing that he was getting, kind of the vibe he was getting, I feel like, from social media and whatnot. You had a long, successful career in the NFL. Let's say you guys barely beat a team you should have blew out, which I don't think there's such a thing in the NFL. Obviously, you can win any weekend, any team, or any given Sunday, they always say. But could you feel that same not a good enough win vibe from the fans or media? And what's your response to that?
So I was fortunate, I think, in a lot of ways of not like Twitter and all this stuff wasn't as prevalent back then. And so I think the players may actually care what the fans. This sounds terrible. I think the players probably actually care enough about the fans now that he would even have to respond to that. Whereas that wouldn't even be a thought in our heads. Like we know how hard it is to win a game in the NFL. And there's just things in games you can't account for. Like, for example, we're missing 4 of our 5 starting linemen. Now they were missing a ton of theirs too, right? But that all of a sudden is a great leveler of the playing field when you're missing that many starters, or maybe you have a receiver out, or maybe they're missing one of the running backs, even though Nick Chubb was amazing yesterday. Right. You just start looking at the game, and it's like, okay, this isn't really our first team versus our first team. This is kind of like 1A or 2 versus 1A or 2. And again, we have this guy that can hide all these mistakes. I think what's always interesting, what's always hard for players is we have egos, right? So we were just talking about it off air. At least 2 of those interceptions by Baker were easy PI calls. For Rodgers gets that call 19 out of 20 times. But either as fans or even as players, like we don't really want to talk about that. We just want to kind of move on and go, all right, no, we got the pick. It's in the stat book already. There's nothing we can do about it. So I think that part of the game, as far as like growing as a player, I think that's kind of one of the hardest things to do, is coming to the realization that after the game's over, you kind of have to be objective in the way you assess how you played and what's going on so you can actually improve. But having said that, we know how tough it is to get just one win in the NFL.
Just get a win. Yeah, Coach was saying yesterday, it's easier to learn from your mistakes after a win than obviously a loss, because they could be detrimental mistakes. And then there's Browns game. I was talking about it earlier this week. The matchup seemed to be a pretty good matchup for us. They had a good running game. They have 2 tight ends that are solid, and obviously their D-line with Myles Garrett against our O-line. It seemed like it wasn't going to be a blowout, and obviously it wasn't. But it turned out we get the win, and like you said, put it in the stat book, and then everybody moves on. Or you want to harp on it, you do your own thing. But I get the fans expect this team to perform better, and I do too. But I'll never complain after a win. Do I hope some things get fixed, whether it's special teams, defense overall, whether it's stopping the run or just getting organized before the snap of the ball, like that end zone touchdown where Zul and safety, I don't remember who it was, they were kind of mixed communication, Savage. And whether it's the offense late in games, they seem to kind of stall out there. 3 straight 3-and-outs before the Douglas interception, and then obviously Rodgers' hard count to seal the game. Rod said after the game, he asked the guys if they should do the hard count. He said basically everyone said, hell yeah, like let's do this thing. Let's end the game. Were there any quarterbacks you played with? Obviously Favre. Is there any quarterback ever that is as good as that, or as good as Rodgers when it comes to getting defenses to jump, catching with 12 guys on the field?
I mean, the only guy that could compare it is Brett. Brett was pretty good at it. They real masters of their craft. Those guys, the guys that are real masters of their craft, they take pride in everything. They don't take pride in just completing passes. They take pride in the whole process, right? That's how you make the play call in the huddle, to whether or not Aaron Rodgers sees there's 12 guys on the field and has a code word to get everybody up to the line of scrimmage fast. Like, all of it matters, and they understand that all of it matters. So I don't know if anybody's, again, like, I think Aaron's probably the best quarterback I've ever seen. But Brett was pretty close. He was a hell of a good player. You just see obviously the turnovers, like the turnover numbers. They showed it yesterday because he had the touchdown thing, and I went, oh, I didn't know he was 3 times the amount of turnovers. That's great.
That was Raj. Yeah, Raj has 90. He's got 200 some. It's like, holy shit. That's just it's crazy to think about that because we don't ever see him the last 10, 15 years. We don't ever see turnovers. So when one does happen, it's like, man, that's detrimental because we won by 2 points yesterday, but won the turnover battle by 4. And that's, I feel like, how we keep winning games is we don't turn the ball over, we take care of it. And like you said with the Kraft thing, Rodgers hates getting sacked, let alone the 0-yard sacks is the least favorite thing, obviously, besides throwing a pick. And like you said, the little things like that, they add up. And if you do them right, then you're more likely going to come out on top more often than not. Rod's getting them to jump, obviously, great way to end the game. Coach talked about yesterday, how hard it is to not let Aaron throw it every time. He's super accurate, like you said, the best you've ever seen. Late in the game yesterday, one of the drives was a 3-and-out. It looked like instead of being all grass, no breaks, it was conservative. 3 straight runs and a punt when we really needed to at least eat time off the clock, maybe get a score to put the game away. Talk us through your thought process late in that game. I thought they got a little too conservative. What do you think?
Well, I think Ben Braden came into the game, and that might have affected just the way they thought about it, which I thought with that, when I heard that, I thought that was interesting because they had been helping. Is it Yash or Yosh?
I say Yash.
Okay, so they've been helping Yash the entire day with Myles Garrett, so I don't think anything would have changed, or they could have put Mercedes and Degar over there and have them double team Garrett. But for me, you run 4-minute offense. That's traditionally what you do. Usually 4-minute offense is in some form of running or play action pass with like a keep so he can get out of bounds, or he can get down. He's not going to put himself in a situation where somebody's going to catch up from behind.
Yep.
So with Aaron, it's just different because he gets out the ball so fast. Like it's tough to imagine. There was a play yesterday that Myles Garrett was literally like clawing down on him, and Rodgers flicked the ball out. Like it's almost like he's throwing darts, right? Mm-hmm. And you just thought, well, if Baker was back there, he would have been pop, long arm, sack, fumble, strip sack, the whole deal. And it's just he has this knack that other people don't have. So the rules don't really apply to him. And I don't know. You have to run the ball. You have 2 backs that have been able to close out games. A.J. Dillon's closed out a ton of games this year for the team. Mm-hmm. So I understand the thought process, certainly, but I really like when the Packers build systems or they build concepts instead of just shooting just different plays out there. Yeah. And by that, I mean, they have an outside zone run, but they can also flick it to the backside if he's open, or they have the receiver screen on an inside zone or a trap game with a keep pass. And he can kind of all do that where the linemen are doing the same thing regardless. The receivers are doing the same thing regardless. It's whether or not he decides to let it go with a running back or keep the ball and throw it. Those kind of plays, in my mind, just make a ton of sense because he doesn't have to throw that ball if it's not wide open.
Right.
But I'm sitting here in a gamer's chair, and they're coaching the Green Bay Packers. So what do I know?
Yeah, playing losing at poker, as I should say.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I agree. Rodgers, he was getting anything he wanted to throwing the ball. Could have sealed the game with a 3rd and 6 pass to Devonte. Like I said earlier, rarely dropped. Looked like he beat him so bad that maybe he was not going for the easy catch, but he just was kind of waiting for it. Maybe the ball hit both of his hands. It would have been a tough catch, but something we don't see often from him. Decided to lean on our backs, like you said. A.J. Dillon closes out games. I'm completely okay with that. I'm always talking about run the ball, control out of scrimmage. When Rodgers is on one, obviously he was in the first half, 3 touchdowns. Keep him rolling, put the game away through the air if that's what's working. But like you said, it's worked in the past. Hand to A.J. Dillon. People hate tackling him. Massive thighs. I mean, he's the perfect complement to Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I love the way those two play off one another. And you could see yesterday, maybe more so than any other game, they actually started running kind of separate plays. Like they were running all their down block and pull schemes for Jones so he can get on the edge and make that single cut, whereas they were doing a lot of their double stuff inside zone with Dillon, and just let him go downhill and try to take that linebacker one-on-one. It's really the thing about running the ball that it's hard for people to understand is it's not just the result of that play. It's psychologically what it does to their entire defense, especially when you're building a concept out of a running play. So if for example, if they're running that down block with Mercedes Lewis and they're pulling out somebody and they're trying to get Aaron Jones on the edge with that single cut, you can run that now with a keep pass. You can run that now play action with a straight drop back. You can run that with a quick pitch. You can run that with a reverse. You could, I mean, there's just so many things that you can do off that action that really make the defensive end, the defensive tackle, the linebackers bite, but they all have to kind of read run. And then, I mean, it happened to us on the other side. And it just, it goes to show you that, you know, the really, really good play callers in this league, the really good kind of scheme guys are the guys that can build out concepts, not just keep firing out, you know, different, kind of completely different plays over and over and over again and hope that the talent on the field will just overcome. Yeah,
run those certain plays, see how the defense reacts, and then pick your other plays off that and just take advantage of it. Let's talk about the defense. 4 interceptions, 5 sacks. They gave up 219 rushing yards. I know the Browns, they're going to have their way with most teams. You got Nick Chubb. You got an offensive line, obviously making the push, making the holes for him. But can you take us behind the scenes and how the Packers are playing to run? What the issue is, and is it easily fixed?
Well, so what the Packers have been doing for the majority of the year, and this actually goes back to the first game. Kevin King was playing cornerback, and they were playing press on the line of scrimmage, and he was getting his doors blown off, right? Mm-hmm. And listen, I think the kid's done a great job of coming back, and when he was healthy, and he stepping up, playing soft coverage, and then coming up and making tackles. But because of that situation, the fact that Jairus Alexander's been gone, they've been playing a shell defense the entire year because our front four could get pressure. So they didn't have to bring a lot of people. So they're just playing back and just coming up and making tackles. And yesterday, with a guy like Baker Mayfield, who just has not been worthy of a number one pick, right, in the way that he's played, they're going to say, oh, listen, if you're going to let him throw, because what have we seen from the Browns recently? They're trying to throw the ball instead of giving it to Nick Chubb. Yeah. When they're the number one rushing. I mean, they're the most well-coached offensive line running scheme system in the National Football League, and it's not even close. And they have some of the best. Wyatt Teller is an absolute unit, right? Mm-hmm. And I know they're missing some guys, but they are unbelievable up front. And so the Packers just said, listen, we're going to play 2 shell, and we're going to have to come up and make tackles. And they've been able to do that. What happens is now you get into a situation where the Browns can beat you flat out, double team Kenny Clark, and get to the second level. They can down block and pull 2 guys and get out to the second level. And now you're relying on your safeties to come down to make plays. And we've already seen this year that, you know, I really like Amos. I like Savage. Savage takes a ton of bad angles into tackles. Yeah, and you can't take a bad angle versus Nick Chubb. And over last night, there were some things, especially in the second half. It's like the Browns decided, I forgot we can run the ball, and we have some of the best players in the league up front. Yeah. And they just kept running the same play because when you run a 3 technique and then a wide 9, you can down block and you can have your guard pull and kick out that wide 9. Our outside linebackers, Gary's great, Preston Smith is great, but they're not 300 pounds, right? And especially when you put our backups in, now they get swallowed up and they're just kind of either running upfield or coming underneath. Nick Chubb's good enough that he can make that one cut and get out to the side, and it's just all you can eat. I mean, if you can get a running back like Nick Chubb in the alley, you're gonna get a ton of yards. Yeah, no, he's thick too. And the thing with Savage is yesterday, Chubb goes outside and there's a blocker right to his right. Well, Savage, it looks like he's huge hole to his left. Savage comes and almost tries to tackle him at the point of the blocker, and he misses. Chubb makes one cut and he's up in the hole 10, 15 yards, and it's like all you got to do is fill the hole, whether you make the tackle or not. I don't know if you're talking about the one where they called the penalty on him. Like, I think that's the worst. I think that's probably the worst rule change that they have, where they'll say like a defensive back, if a lineman's running at you, you can't take him low. Yeah, I think that's the worst. That is of all the things that don't make any sense in the league. Like to try to take a guy who's 100 pounds bigger than you, like face to face, doesn't make any sense at all. No. But it is what you have to do from Savage's standpoint is you have to understand your rules. And are you supposed to be giving up the side? Are you using the sideline as your friend, or are you using the open field and the defense as your friend? And in a lot of situations, you see him just literally tracking like the wrong hip. Like he should be tracking the near hip into contact. He's somehow tracking the far hip like it's 1985 still. He gets cut back on all the time, and it's just it's one of those deals where as somebody who did that, coached a lot of that stuff for a living, you go, that's such an easy fix, but they're just not even interested in fixing it because I mean, it's been the entire season.
Yeah, and it just keeps happening. Defense, like we were saying, playing near the top of the league earlier this season during the stretch of Kyler Murray, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, they were holding those guys. So, Russell no points, Mahomes and Murray under 15, 20 points. And I believe they can get back there, especially if we see Jair join them soon. And like you said, it's an easy fix for Savage. And a couple of those plays, instead of 10, 15 yards, they're 2, 3, 4-yard gains. And who knows what Baker's going to do on 3rd and long or 3rd and medium, because he was, like you said, throwing the ball all over the place.
Rob, I want to say one thing. I think it's really interesting, though, because across the entire league, you're seeing a ton of teams kind of go out of character from years past and play this two-shell look and just basically saying, we're going to give up these smaller plays. We're just not going to give up the big plays. Right. We don't think you can go 15 plays and beat us. We think you're going to make a mistake.
Yep.
And this is like the pendulum is always swinging in the NFL, right? You get, if Aaron Donald shows up, you got to get small offensive linemen again, or they create a rule change. You got to get different, got to get a bigger, stronger DB.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening right now is the teams that can run the ball against are going to have success against the Packers because they want to play 6 in the box and they want to play shell looks.
Yeah.
And when you do that, if you told me going into a game, when I played with the Packers with Amon Green in the backfield, if you said, hey, you're only going to have 6 in the box looks for the rest of the day, we would say, oh, we're going to get 200 yards too. Not because we're that good, but because we have a running back that can run, and that's not even fair.
Right.
And so that's what's starting to happen is you see these good teams, the pendulum's kind of swinging back, and all of a sudden these two shell looks aren't going to hold up against good offensive lines and good running backs. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And it seems like they've been playing a little slower. Do you think giving up those big plays, obviously Justin Jefferson, Van Jefferson, OBJ in the Rams game, and then, in the Bears game even, and then Mark Andrews, obviously, with the Ravens last week, you think giving up the big plays, they're a little hesitant to really just fly to their spots, fly to the ball? Do you think that has something to do with it?
I think there's psychology that goes into every play, but I also think there's a really deep psychology that goes into play calling, right? And you put enough stuff in the playbook, and one of the things that some really good defensive coordinators do, the Ravens did this all the time, is they almost use their their play sheet in normal downs as like Rolodex, and they just start running through different coverages, right?
Yeah.
And not every team can do that very well. Like some teams, you just got to go, listen, we have young guys, or we have just guys that don't communicate as well as some other teams, so we just got to run we can go between quarters and 2 and 2 man, and that's all we can do. And every time you see, like with the Packers, you've seen a couple times this year where they'll all of a sudden drop a safety down, or they'll maybe run some sort of pressure. They get beat deep, and it's like, probably didn't need to do that. It probably wasn't worth it. So you just start looking at, but it's in our nature. Like a defensive coordinator is not getting a coaching job because he's running 2 shell all day. He's not going to.
Nope.
So you got to think there's a lot of psychology that plays here, right? Wink Martindale in Baltimore with all the different stuff they run, even though they're all injured right now, and he's gonna get calls faster than a guy who's running 2 shell all day. It just is what it is.
No, I get it. Moving the offensive side of the ball, Devonte Adams. What does having a guy like this on your offense do as far as impacting the play calls, play in, play out? He's getting so much attention, so obviously you can run plays off that, but he's also so good that you just have to get him the ball. Because he takes over games. He quietly has 100 yards, 10 catches, and 2 touchdowns or a touchdown. How does having a game wrecker like him change the way the offense is ran?
Well, I think it just gives your other players more options. And the fact that you have a guy that can drop it in a bucket from anywhere, is a huge deal too. Devonte is a very, very special player. You obviously saw it with what do they call it, 17 Bulldog last week versus the Ravens.
Yep.
But he's a guy where he's so good now, and I think 21 was all pro. He got voted in all pro this year.
Yep.
And you just go, if he's single cover, man, there's no chance you're beating him. And Devonte beat 21 on a quick slant yesterday, where 21 I forgot his name, sorry, but he came up and tried to get in his face, and it's like that's another situation where now we know that you're nervous because you're going off script to try something new because you're in trouble. When you have we had Steve Smith in Carolina. He was the best receiver I've ever played with.
Yep.
And when you had a guy like that, the entire defense was rotated towards that guy, whether they were going to double him up or whether they were just going to play a press up front and then play a guy behind him with the linebacker dropping into his area. The whole focus was just worrying about that one guy. I'm not sure. You've seen some teams try to do that with Green Bay, but they still score a ton of points. Yeah. So it's like you just don't. Again, it goes back to Rodgers. Like when you have a guy like Rodgers, what do what do you want to take away? Because he can literally hurt you with everybody else, especially way Lazard when MVS is healthy. He's just got DeGuara starting to play pretty well in the passing game, and then you have two backs now that are legitimate star backs in this league. It's a big deal. That's a huge
run and catch. So it's like not only opens up to Lazard, like you said, Lazard, MVS. When Cobb was in, he was doing great. But then you got these guys leaking out of the backfield, and it's like, hey, we're covering all these guys, and then you got these two hanging out. It's just, what do you want to stop? And if it's 17, you're probably not going to stop him either way. But if you do, we'll go somewhere else. I absolutely loved watching Devonte play, whether he gets the ball or not. He seems like he's so fluid and smooth with everything he does. He makes it look so simple. When in reality, obviously, every little thing he does perfectly. Footwork, late hands, leaning in or leaning out on a DB, then breaking off to make the catch. I'm grateful to be able to witness it, and it's gone by so quick. And maybe just last couple of years, we're starting to realize, like, man, this, obviously with the record breaker yesterday with him and Rodgers connections breaking Jordy's record, it's now becoming, that wide receiver one conversation that's been a debate the last few years. Now it's just like, no, it's him, and that's it.
Yeah, and you see with Aaron and then with Brett before him, you see a lot of these guys in the NFL come to Green Bay, and they could have been great receivers anywhere else, but they're top-level elite receivers now because the standard for them is so high. Like you just talked about, Devonte Adams does everything perfect. All of his routes, his footwork, his releases, his hands, when to nudge a guy through a route and not. Late hands, like you said, his eyes. But you can't – the hours that he spends that I'm just telling you from experience, other receivers don't spend that kind of time.
Yeah.
So appreciate – from a fan's perspective, appreciate the amount of work that he's putting into being that good. It's not just showing up at practice and he's just practicing, 4 times a week and being that good. It's all the stuff he's doing outside of that practice as well that's getting him to be in that position. Then obviously working with a guy where the expectations and the bar is so high, like you don't have a choice. If you want to play, you want that respect, you got to put in the time.
Got to work for it. Yep, I completely agree. It's working out for him so far. And so last thing here before we move on, they're 12-3. NFC North was clinched last week. 3rd straight year. Got a clear shot at the 1 seed, and for the playoffs to run through a sold-out Lambeau Field. Rodgers playing MVP ball. This year's shaping out to be pretty special.
Yeah, I think so. The hard part is right now they've been to the NFC Championship the last 2 years, and if you would have said 4 weeks ago, how do you feel? You feel great. Yeah. And the last 4 weeks, there's especially the last 2 games, there's just been these things coming up, I think, on the defensive side of the ball where it kind of makes me take pause because I looked at like last night's game. If they're playing Tampa, I mean, that game might have been in the 40s. It could have been a really, really high scoring game.
Right.
The Rams are playing better ball right now. Yep. Right. The Niners are playing good ball right now. You just start looking down the league, and the Niners is actually an easy one because although I don't think any of us think Garoppolo can come in here and win, we also think that Trent Williams can come here and win. Deebo Samuel can come. George Kittle can come. They can all come here and win, right? Because the way if you let them take over the game, then we have some issues that we need to fix. But yeah, I think offensively, it's just really fun to watch somebody like I'm an athlete first, and it's just fun to watch somebody who's so much better than everybody else. And you just sit there every game and it's like get out your popcorn. And even if he has 200 yards of offense, it's like he's still the way that he goes about his craft, man. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Even from Thursday night, you watch the Titans-Niners game, and I'm just like, man, these quarterbacks, they're just not that good. I
had Tannehill in Miami, and I love like Ryan's a tough guy. He's such a competitor, and it just shows you like what a different environment and like better coaching and everything gets you. Right. But yeah, if you look at, and I think Tannehill would probably humbly say this too. Like if you look at his game and then Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's apples and oranges, right? It's like almost oil and water. Now he could still have a great game and have a good day against the Packers, and they could still win the game. That's not what I'm saying, but just as far as just generational talent, man, this is different.
Yep, no, I think so too. Get a few things ironed out. Maybe we'll see D-Bog, Jair, maybe Za'Darius load up, kind of for a long playoff run. Only time will tell. I'm excited though. Let's move on here. You were the first NFL skill development coach in the NFL. How did that even start or come about? To pave your way in the NFL coaching realm in general, then for you to create a whole new position, really. How'd that start? How'd that come about? And if you could walk us through that.
Yeah, it was. I went back I just missed being in the NFL. So I was in finance for 5 years after I retired and kind of went and got my MBA and did the whole, went to a hedge fund and everything. And just really miss being in the NFL. So I had the opportunity to go back. Joe Philbin was coaching. Green Bay's Joe Philbin was coaching in Miami. He was the head coach there, and they brought me back in. I literally had to take an intern role and went out and ended up being working with the tight ends with his group with Dan Campbell. And then when Dan became the head coach, working in that room still. And you start seeing some trends of the people that are coming in, the way that people are being coached, and kind of the lack of not the lack of talent, but the lack of productivity on the field. I attributed it a lot more to these people just didn't have the technique to be successful, and they didn't have the tool set to be elite. That a lot of us, I think, just kind of either figured out or had really good coaches or mentors when we were younger.
Yep.
I have this really simple equation. It's you improve your technique, you improve your ability to make decisions and execute on those decisions, right? And that's going to help you run any scheme a coach wants to call against any opponent that you have.
Yeah.
And so a technique is the foundation of everything for me. So I really got interested in how can we just improve the fundamentals of this, the movement patterns, the techniques of this sport, so we can make these better decisions and execute better. And, we just got really lucky, I think, as far as some circumstances in Miami and was able to put together a program later on that we really, we worked on everything. But we worked on blocking and tackling, incorporating that into the strength and conditioning side, and kind of bridging the gap between all the proper movement patterns the strength and conditioning staff is teaching your players every single offseason, and then how that actually translates to the techniques your coaches are trying to teach you during the year.
Yep. No, that's perfect. No doubt. Teams, they need good evaluators, and people like yourself recognize talent a different way and kind of, like you said, bridge the gap, between those two things. So bravo. You're the founder of Unrivaled Systems, Process to Perform, also host of the Process to Perform podcast. Let's start with Process to Perform. How did the idea start, and what are you up to today?
Yeah, so the Process to Perform, we started doing the podcast during COVID because I have you have these thoughts in your head and you want to make sure you get them out to the people that want to hear them. And it was all about player development. And so we started a podcast for parents, players, and coaches. People are interested in that kind of movement, those ideas, and really starting with everything from, we really talk about three themes: mindset development, technical mastery, and ownership decisions, which are just lifestyle decisions in the best interest of future you. And try to hit a new kind of topic every week, and things that are coming up in the media, and just how to address that and how to internalize that as an athlete, or maybe how to work with an athlete as a parent or coach in those situations. So that's been a lot of fun. It's given me an opportunity to talk to a lot of kind of interesting people. And next year in 2022, we're going to start off and just do months of interviews. I've done a lot of that kind of solo. We're going to start doing a lot of interviews with lead athletes, performance psychologists, venture capitalists, just people that are in the competitive space, and just get into their mind, get into how they prepare, get into kind of the decisions they make on a day-to-day and what makes them elite. And then, from there, we took a lot of the stuff that we were working with the professional athletes at the team level for, and just said, I think I can get more bang for my buck or more gratification, I should say, if I just start working with individuals, whether that's professional athletes all the way down to kind of preteens in any sport, in any confrontational sport. If you want to become elite, if you kind of have the commitment to the cause and the drive to be your best, but you don't really have the tool set, then we really just kind of help you form that tool set again with those themes: mindset decisions, or mindset development, technical mastery, and ownership decisions. So I have a platform that we've had a lot of success with, and it's been fun to be able to kind of reach out to different sports, different age groups, but all these people are just kind of hungry for success and not necessarily finding the path. And so being able to help, mentor, et cetera.
Yeah, and you can provide that. You just said mindset, technical mastery, and lifestyle, otherwise known as the 3 dials. I was doing a little research. How do you implement the 3 dials into the athletes and clients you're working with? What are the main courses of action you take for that?
Well, a lot of it's about personal accountability. A lot of it's about objectively being able to assess what you're putting on the field or on the court. We talk about everything kind of starts with your ability to identify, assess, and correct what I like to call your areas of opportunity, which are just my kind of nice way of saying your deficiencies. Yeah. Right. If you can't identify, assess, and correct your own stuff, you're not going to be able to own your career, and you're always going to be subject to. We talked about it before. You and I have both had bad coaches. Maybe we have parents that are supportive, but they don't necessarily know what they're talking about, right? They're just kind of parent fans. And so if we don't have that ability to objectively look at ourselves kind of post game and go through that process, then I think it's very difficult over the long term to kind of get to where you want to go. And then once you have that understanding, it's like, how do we put that system in? How do we implement that from a skill development standpoint? What I call progression stacking. How do we do that at the best rate possible? How do we transfer that success that we're finding in practice and finding in these training sessions to like game day, right? And all of that is wrapped around really in how do we create routines that develop the habits of our lives that are going to make us the best versions of us? That's really what it's all about, right? Habits are technique and habits are really the same thing. They're physical actions that we don't have to think about.
Right.
And so we really try to develop a lot of routines, hold a lot of accountability, create these habits, and just educate. I think education and working on everything from the shoulders up is 90% more important than all the technique we do. And I think the technique work that we do now with these athletes and the movement pattern stuff is second to none. But I think that the work upstairs is even more important.
Yeah, because all the tools up there, you can't act on them. How about the podcast? How has the podcast helped you connect to potential clients, athletes who could be interested in taking part of the process of reform? I know you said you started during quarantine. Was that kind of a quick pivot? Obviously, you couldn't do as much in person during the first stage of that. How did that kind of help you connect to everybody?
Yeah, I think you just started reaching out with the thing was really I was living in Southern California and I had a lot of parents and a lot of little athletes that I worked with there, and I couldn't get a hold of them. It was just tough to be in person. So I just started doing this, and I already had a template of how we taught a lot of information anyway. So we just started trying to put that together and build it up and get more comfortable on the microphone and all of that work. But I think over the long term, now you reach out to people across the country. You have different clients that are listening to these things, and they share that information. And I mean, listen, it's not the biggest podcast in the world, certainly, but what I've found satisfaction with, I think, is we get a lot of people that listen to the podcast and then we'll hit you up for follow-up questions and have that interaction. Because
nice.
At the end of the day, for me, Rob, like I got to live my dream, man. I wanted to do this since I was like 6 years old. I wanted to play ball. That was it for me. And if I can help anybody else that's really committed to their cause and dedicated to what they want to do, if I can help them get there, then that's just so fulfilling. And being able to be part of that unit, that family unit, that inner circle, I just love that opportunity.
Yeah, part of a good reason to enjoy it. I think it's a great way to reach out, different audience, kind of, throw it on during a walk, run, workout, car ride. Everything's so accessible now that if you don't really have that, like we were talking about before the show, the social media presence or podcast presence, you're kind of missing out on some of that audience.
Yeah, and again, I think it's really tough. We were talking about it before. Like if Twitter started hitting when I was still playing, and I was like, I'm not going to get on this. I'll never forget Matt Hasselbeck. We're over at famous Seahawks quarterback. He's on ESPN now. The guy's an amazing human, right? But he's over at my house watching a UFC fight. It was like one of the Chuck Liddell fights back in the day. And it was like all the linemen, Matt's sitting over there, and everyone's just watching this fight. It's an amazing fight. And he's down there. And I go, what are you doing? And then he's like, oh, I'm tweeting out that I'm at your house watching the fight. And I almost took his phone and threw it out the window. I was like, what are we doing now? So that part of it, you got to get hip to, but yeah, it's amazing how much stuff is out there now, right? Whether it's Twitch, whether it's all the channels on YouTube, it's great. But then from my perspective too, there's a lot of people out there that are virtual experts that have no idea what they're talking about. And you see a lot of bad actors kind of taking advantage of people who are desperate for help. And, there's no way to police it. You just have to do your research.
Yeah, you kind of got to weed through those guys because, like you said, they're out there and they're out there in bunches, and you got to weed through them. And if you don't, then you're kind of stuck educating yourself with people who don't know what they're talking about. So something that rarely ever, you rarely ever hear about this, unless players take on roles in the media or they're doing something cool after their career, is kind of what they're up to after they retire. Talk us through why you think it's important for players to look past the game and towards their future, to be prepared instead of going into retirement with no plan or direction.
So that's interesting. I can kind of see both sides of the coin. So when I was playing, the brand awareness that is available is today, again, it probably is a consequence of social media. These people are much more brand aware. Like they have a different value. They hold a different value of themselves than I think we did as athletes. Like I told you before, I wanted to be an athlete since as long as I can remember. And I didn't care if I was going to play 8 years or 15 years. I was going to, that amount of time, that finite amount of time, you were going to get my best. I wasn't going to be distracted by trying to start a record company or something. That's not what I thought was a good idea. Having a little more perspective now, I think, and what I think a lot of good athletes are doing, what a lot of athletes are doing now that makes a lot of sense is they're putting a team together, then kind of start to put them in positions to be successful after their career, whether it's with investments, or whether it's with, if they're interested in the music industry, or they're interested in the car industry, or they're interested in real estate. We can start kind of dabbling in these things through a third party that's attached to you. It's part of your inner circle. I think that makes a ton of sense. I still think that, it's always nice to have an idea of what you want to do when you get out, but at the same time, the moment that you have a plan B, you're on your way out the door. So there's a very fine balance of understanding that, listen, people love you because you're an athlete. People don't love you because you're a good guy. They love you because you can block a 3 technique, right? And then they find out your personality and determine whether they want to like you more.
Right.
Okay? But ultimately, the performance on the field is what's going to matter most for most of these athletes for most of their career. And once maybe you get past that point, or you decide that maybe it's time to start looking at other things, like, just know that the end is near, and that's okay. And then, I had Keyshawn Johnson on my team with Carolina Panthers. It was his last year in the league, I believe. Keyshawn was basically doing a paid internship with ESPN at that point, right? Like, he would show up and he'd practice and play and everything, but on Monday mornings he had his own show in Carolina, 4-hour show on ESPN. I'd be driving into the stadium and listening to Keyshawn tell everybody how bad we played the day before, and it was weird because you knew he was clearly concerned about something else, but now you see how successful he's been. And you go, well, it was probably worth it for him, right? And it's just you have to figure out what kind of personality you have, and that makes sense for you.
Yeah, there's that fine line. Time goes by fast, and obviously you know more than me. Being in the NFL takes up a lot of time, a lot of effort. And then before you know it, you played 11 seasons, and then boom, it's time to retire and move on to the next chapter of your life. Obviously, super important to have some sort of plan or vision, but also at the same time, with the fine line thing, you can't, look too far ahead of that chapter, because then you're checked out as far as playing and practicing and all that. So
yeah, I think the big thing to concern yourself with is the timeline. I think between when you finish and then when you want to try something new is pretty short, right? Because you still have, you still have a name up to a certain point. So I tell athletes this, like, even if guys are just kind of struggling to make it, you don't know if they're going to give it, be able to give it a fair shot or not.
Yeah,
we're going to live to be 90, 100 years old at this point, right? The next generation.
Yep.
And you go, gosh, man, if you're done at 26 years old or 30 or 32, you got like 70 years left. So you'll figure it out, right? Make the thing. Like, especially if you're making $5 million a year, I know it sounds like a ridiculous amount of money, right? Like, that's pretty common in the NFL now, making $5 million a year.
Yep.
And so if you're making $5 million a year and you got your eyes somewhere else, I just don't understand that. Like, I really have a hard time going, this team's going to pay me $15 million a year, but I want to go put some energy into this over here. I don't get that. Same. But what I will say is, when it's time to go, you already know you have interests outside of football, and you're going to have that window of opportunity to explore them. You just don't want to sit and do nothing for 3-4 years and then realize, oh gosh, like, my window closed.
It's too late.
That makes sense?
Yeah, makes sense a lot. Before I let you go, Mike, I want to hit you with a few rapid fire questions. Is that cool?
Sure.
Let's do it. Your greatest moment during your football career?
Man, it's a hard one. Probably the first time I started a game in Green Bay. I mean, I never thought you dream about it. You never thought you're actually going to do it.
It's real. No. All right. Your favorite current Packer to watch?
I love watching Kenny Clark.
Kenny Clark is an animal.
Kenny Clark's a stud. I love watching that guy.
You saw how much we missed him last week. It could be the defensive MVP. And one of the guys that doesn't get talked about, I feel like that position overall doesn't get talked about. And if it does, it's Aaron Donald, because he's such a good D tackle. But the other guys, even if they're, 1B or number 2 behind Aaron, don't get talked about a whole lot.
I should say Mercedes Lewis is by far my favorite tight end for the last 15 years. Yeah. Like, I think that he's such a pro in the way he's teach tape blocking for offensive linemen. Like, when I show offensive linemen teach tape stuff, I show him. He's that good.
Yeah, I love listening to him. He's always on Colin Cowherd or all those big shows, and I love listening to him. Great leader, great dude. And some of those guys, you need to have those guys in your locker room. That doesn't get talked about a whole lot. You need to have the leadership and the kind of brotherhood tied together. I had Dominique Daphne on the show a couple months ago, and he talked about, Mercedes fixing these little things is what's adding up over the season to kind of really just put it together.
Yeah, he's the glue. You can tell he's the glue for sure.
Yeah. Favorite hobby outside of work / football?
Oh, lifting weights. I love lifting weights.
Yeah.
So that's always been my favorite thing to do. If I'm stressed out, if I got something on my mind, I just go work out.
Yep. Favorite non-Packer player to watch in the NFL?
Non-Packer?
Yep.
Probably Aaron Donald.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that. He's one of the best ever.
He's the best D lineman I've ever seen.
Yeah. So
He's John Randall at his prime was Aaron Donald. Now,
okay.
For people who don't know.
Well, that's great. So I also enjoy watching him. He's kind of struggled against the Packers. Not struggle, but he seems to kind of lose his cool the last 2 times.
It's frustrating when Aaron Rodgers gets rid of the ball in like 0.75 seconds. And, I have no idea how you beat Aaron Rodgers. It just comes down to play calling, to be honest with you, because he's going to the way he executes is just next level.
Yeah. One last thing here. Packers offensive line, they had a bunch of injuries, obviously a ton of shuffling around. We were talking about earlier. Just overall, what do you think of their performance this season, given the amount of changes we've seen in that room?
Yeah, hats off. I think Adam Stenavich, if he gets an OC or even a head coaching job next year, I wouldn't be shocked, man, because he's just done such a good job with that unit, hiding their deficiencies, putting in a scheme that kind of works, and again, building off concepts, which honestly – I try to make a big deal of because I don't think a lot of teams are doing that as well as they used to. I think guys have stepped in and done a great job. John Runyon Jr. is going to be a starter in this league. Royce has, he's got a long ways to go as far as I think where he's going to be physically maybe in 3 years from now, but he certainly had a good start to the season. Billy Turner was playing. Some people like him, some people don't. I think Billy Turner's been doing a great job. I'm sad that to see him go down. I hope Kelly can kind of get his pad level down a little bit and play a little more physical. But he's a guy that's played a lot in this league and can have success. Myers is going to be a great player. I think Patrick's probably the weak link on the team. But again, I say that and then I go, man, I just love the way the guy finishes. And there's something to that too. Like there's a value that you ascribe to his ability to try to finish and kind of do everything he can to be that person on their team. So I just think they've got so much talent, and they've just done such a good job of masking all these Jenkins injury. Obviously, Bakhtiari was the best tackle in the league, not named Trent Williams, and now we haven't seen him the entire year, and they still are 12-3. It's amazing.
Yeah, we've held up. So no, this is great, Mike. You want to any last words before we close it down here?
just that I really enjoy talking football with you. I love talking about the Packers and just kind of the nuances of the game. I just think right now with all of the like we talked about with all that's out there, right, to find people like yourself that are just generally interested in the sport and not trying to do a hot take every 35 seconds,
right,
is refreshing. So I appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the comments because that's what a lot of things are now. Is you're trying to make a exciting clip, post it, and get a bunch of reactions. I just keep it simple, and I just love talking about the Packers. Well, we were chatting about Jordy Nelson, Donald Driver for 10, 15 minutes before we came on here. That's just what I love to do because it's my favorite thing. So awesome. This was fun. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Mike, where can the viewers find you, whether it's on social media, website, etc.?
Yeah, Twitter, hit me up, Mike Wahle 68, Process to Perform on Instagram. And then if you want to check out my website, it's just process2perform.com.
Perfect. Had a great time. We'll do this again sometime. So thanks for coming on. My pleasure to everybody. And thank you for everybody commenting. I see them all over here on the side here. Have a great rest of your weekend. For Mike and myself, we'll catch you guys later. Thank you.